Bienvenidos al último día de BIZ FIT Panamá 2020. Mi nombre es Catherine Boyce y tengo el placer de acompañarlos nuevamente en este gran proyecto. BIZ FIT es el evento anual más importante de tecnología, innovación y negocios, organizado por Capatec y coorganizado por la Fundación Ciudad del Saber. Muchísimas gracias a todos por su participación en este día. Y hoy continuaremos con la agenda, con nuevos temas enfocados en innovación y emprendimiento, que la verdad es que me encantan demasiado. Todo esto gracias a nuestros patrocinadores PROPANAMA, AI, Panamá, Hub Digital, Negocios Digitales, Credit Corp Bank, NIC Panamá, Cable and Wireless y Banismo. Y para dar inicio, les presento a la embajadora de PROPANAMA, Carmen Vergara, quien estará dando algunas palabras.
Muy buenos días. Good morning to everyone. Muy buenos días. Buenos días a todos. Good morning to everyone, especially to our good friend John Penny, who's here with us today. Thank you for being here with us. I would like to take a moment to congratulate Capatec, especially the President Raquel Garcia and the members of her board for this excellent event. The fact that this year the conference is virtual is a reminder of how things have changed and will continue to change in the future. But one thing is certain, technology will play a pivotal role in shaping the future of our planet, and our country cannot fall behind. We have to use technology to further our recovery process because we will need to transform in order to make a faster recovery. And in today's world, it is easy to see everything as a service, but we need to create value with services. Panama has always been known as a service-based economy, and we have to find innovative and creative ways in which we can cover any type of service to make them more competitive. But how do we do it? And I think that John will talk about this in depth because with the changes in consumer preference and behavior in distribution and supply chains, and with businesses using more technology than now to boost their growth, how can Panama play to its strengths in banking and logistics and transform education to recover and amplify the tourism sector? More than intelligence, we need wisdom to transform into a more inclusive, productive, and sustainable economy that will not only recover faster, but with opportunities for all. Buenos días y muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Carmen Gisela, por tus palabras y, por supuesto, gracias al apoyo de PROPANAMA, agencia responsable de implementar las acciones necesarias para la atracción de inversión a nuestro país. Y a continuación presentamos el video de nuestro patrocinador PROPANAMA. Gracias. Ahora recibamos, por favor, a Danilo Fernández, director senior de negocios corporativos de Cable and Wireless, patrocinador oficial de nuestro evento.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días a todos. Les pido una disculpa si mi español no es perfecto. Yo soy brasileño, como ya deben haber percibido. Hoy es nuestro tercer día de BIZ FIT Panamá y estamos más que maravillados del reto que hemos superado en este evento al ser 100% virtual. Este año hemos tenido que autodescubrirnos y superar retos, pero la tecnología ha estado ali en cada paso para brindarnos oportunidades plenas de conectar con nuestra cotidianidad, ¿no? Ao estar nesse encontro virtual, encontramos o espaço para interactuar e não perder a ruta a nosso conhecimento. Les felicito por isso, não? E atualizando-nos com tendências, onde a inovação, a criatividade e os desejos, por ser mais digitais e modernos, nos complace, porque em Carmen Wireless Business compartimos esse mesmo norte, não? E é o que nos identifica precisamente com esses eventos, em onde mantenemos a mesma identidade por el progresso, o futuro e a tecnologia. E porque a tecnologia nos entusiasma e conecta de la mesma maneira, hoje, Carmen Wireless Business, nos honramos de auspiciar a Conferência Internacional Innovation and Scaling, a cargo de John Penny, Chief Strategy Office Business Development and Strategic Partnerships Executive, quem se une a BIZ FIT para oferecer-nos sua perspectiva sobre a realidade e a inovação. Aproveitando, é um tempo oportuno para abrir-nos a novas perspectivas e essa é a melhor maneira. Assim que antes que apareça nosso invitado internacional, quisiera que conhecieran nossa solução SD-WAN. Essa nova tecnologia permite identificar e integrar, através da conectividade, que pode ser de internet ou de redes privadas, o melhor caminho ou flexibilidade para que as aplicações de nossos clientes se possam conectar e estes possam desfrutar de uma melhor experiência de serviço basada em la rapidez e em la agilidade e, por supuesto, em uma melhor acessibilidade a las aplicações. Lo lançamos esse ano para o mês de agosto e hemos recebido a acogida das empresas porque é uma solução que les permite a las empresas ter uma melhor experiência no uso de internet e um ahorro de gastos de mantenimento. Dicho isso, John Penny, bem-vindo e graças por acompanhar-nos. Buenos dias a todos.
Muchísimas gracias, Danilo. La verdad, siempre es un honor contar con ustedes. El protagonista del siguiente segmento es, por supuesto, Cable and Wireless.
Gracias.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Si utilizas una red tradicional a través de tus diferentes oficinas distribuidas, comprenderás que es complejo e ineficiente. Pero ¿y si te dijéramos que hay una mejor opción? Ahora la red puede evolucionar, centralizando la administración y simplificando las tareas de TI por medio de la virtualización de funciones de red. CLW Business te presenta SD-WAN, el camino hacia lo extraordinario. Para tener visualización de tus aplicaciones críticas y el control de tus datos, y así respaldar el uso de aplicaciones en la nube, iniciativas de transformación digital y nuevas oportunidades de negocios. No importa tu ubicación, trae tu propia conectividad. Integra tu red con SD-WAN. SD-WAN es simple de manejar y administra políticas desde uno o múltiples sitios a través de toda la red. Al tener visibilidad de la red, las políticas pueden ser configuradas para asegurar que el tráfico es dirigido a cualquier parte de la red y obtener un mejor rendimiento, detectando y clasificando las aplicaciones críticas de su negocio. Con SD-WAN, cruza el camino hacia lo extraordinario, de forma simple, escalable y con agilidad para generar grandes negocios. SD-WAN, el camino hacia lo extraordinario, de CLW Business.
Y bueno, definitivamente es un honor recibir a quien presentará la Keynote Conference del día de hoy, John Penny, director de Estrategia y Desarrollo Empresarial. El área de especialización de John incluye el desarrollo de la innovación en modelos de negocios, crecimiento, suscripción, consumidor, innovación de productos y economía de contenido. Ha ocupado puestos ejecutivos en 20th Century Fox, HBO, entre otras. Welcome, John, and thank you for your participation. The stage is all yours.
Well, thank you so much, and I really appreciate your having me. This is such a powerful event, and we're going to talk this morning about some exciting areas that are evolving in the world of business that are relevant to the 4 million people in Panama. My good friend Carmen and I have talked about innovation over the months, and this morning we're going to talk about business as a service. I'm going to start the presentation right now, and we're going to do a little bit, if you can imagine, the school children of Panama and in the United States, because of the pandemic, are working from home. Let's think of ourselves in a learning mode, because much of what we're going to talk about today is an exciting evolution of business technology and business models in service format that play particularly well to what's going on not only in Panama as the economy continues to accelerate since the mid 2000s all the way into the future. So as we heard from cable and wireless, technology, business connectivity are really critical in enabling new types of businesses that can transform the Panamanian economy, help the citizenry, and give us all a greater connectivity, not just around the telecommunications infrastructure, but around business with global partners. And business as a service is a trend that we are going to go more deeply into right now. We'll take about a half hour, and then we'll do a question answer format after that. But I wanted to let you know that I'm coming from, I'm right here in Santa Monica, California, and my history in terms of business and strategy and technology has been in the commercial entertainment and technology businesses. I started as a banker and focusing specifically on research around technology, media, and telecommunications. But a lot of what you're going to see today in our discussion of business as a service has actually been going on in the media and entertainment space. For example, when you subscribe to a service like HBO or Netflix, there were elements in that you'll see are being transformed in today's high-tech world and low-tech world to provide new and unique business models that can be considered as part of the offering that Panama can provide its own inter-country partnerships and business opportunities, but also those with the world. So with a little bit of school and a class that we're doing here together, and I really, when we get to the Q&A and the discussion, this really will be two-way, I need to point out a very important definition for you this morning. And what this definition is a real distinction between service businesses, and those are typically businesses that are, for example, in the United States, lodging, where there's a customer face often, where you might see in travel, many different categories in business as well, legal, accounting. Those are service businesses that provide services that give value to customers. And those customers can be individuals like this lady walking to the reception in the hotel, or it can be to businesses themselves, so business-to-business services. That's a big distinction because about 10 years ago, a critical point was achieved in technology where people started to see that actually technology and other types of infrastructure that Panama is sitting on top of as well could be provided to partners as services. So the distinction that you're going to see in our discussion here, and where we're going to go deeper into the innovation landscape, is these businesses as services and what those could mean for you in your business in Panama, the Panamanian economy in general, the people of Panama, who are the workforce, the government certainly, who can help achieve a transformation along with the private sector and beyond. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time thinking about this notion of business as a service. And when I say that, I want you to think about these ideas on this slide that I'm going to quickly go through. And I want you to think less about, for the time being, the type of business that is a, quote, service business. And in that, you could hold a hotel or some sort of, traditional legal or accounting business in your head. So business as a service is about providing, and I'll use a technology example, it's about providing technology capabilities to customers in a way that's scalable so that you can buy as little or as much as you need. You might have heard of Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, and we're not going to spend a lot of time specifically on these businesses because there are other ones that are pretty intriguing that I think you'll find interesting. Some of them are sort of funny too when you see some of the service businesses. But what these businesses do is they basically, and we'll dive into this, take a core of cost and allow customers to, so the owner of the service platform, in the case of, in the prior slide, the technology platform, those computer servers, could rent those servers to customers so that the customer could buy only what they needed when they needed it. So the client would have a lower startup cost. There would be a menu of choices. Maybe they want a security package or more connectivity. This is stuff that cable and wireless does so well in your market, and provides then some offers where there's self-service capability or technical support to round out this business as a service concept. So with that definition in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a worldwide trend that I think you'll find interesting, which is there's a tidal wave of businesses as services being launched. And what I want you to see when we start to talk about this and a little bit about the business models and economics behind these is from the strategy point of view, and then from the innovation point of view. I want you to start to have a framework by the end of our conversation in which you might start to imagine ways that you'll take your business and maybe create service offerings for your business as a service, and therefore have greater opportunity to sell to more customers and be more impactful in your economic and business circumstances. So I'm throwing up a slide here that shows many different businesses as services, and I have two more. And when you look at these, you're going to go, what's John talking about, right? Volvo, a car company, a delivery company out of the UK, Instacart, Airbnb, rentals of apartments and the like around the world, a music service. Rolls-Royce is not the car company in this case, it's the jet engine company. And Uber you're familiar with, I mentioned AWS. But these are leading companies defining a new generation of business offering, which is business as a service. And their products as services are defined by you, the customer, either being an individual, if you're looking for an apartment to rent in Panama City, or maybe one here in Santa Monica when you come and visit me, or when you're wanting to have something delivered or to use the technology of Amazon Web Services, you interact with these businesses and they provide you service on demand, business on demand. So in the case of I am looking for an apartment, I go to Airbnb, I look over the offerings, I choose one, and they connect me as an internet platform with a landlord, and that landlord provides me a limited service without the hotel, without the front desk, without that, quote, service business, as we saw before, approach. And it's very similar in a funny twist to the Rolls-Royce company. When you buy an airplane and then you buy jet engines, they actually give you the engines with some cost up front, a limited cost up front, but then they provide you the engines as a service, maintenance, data, intelligence to keep them running well. Very different than the old model of just selling you something and providing you support afterwards. And one of my favorite examples now is Volvo, where you no longer even own the car or lease it. You literally buy the car as a service, so you can change cars every once in a while faster than you would if you leased it. There's no maintenance. A convertible this year, if it's too rainy, hard top, maybe next year because kids are coming along, what we call a station wagon or a minivan. And these new concepts are changing the nature of how businesses are offering their customers greater value. because when you hear me say business as a service and then the technologies and other things that we'll talk about that you need to do this behind it, it's really about what Carmen said in the beginning in her comments, connecting the greatest value from the customer to the business service supplier in this technology platform or maybe something else. But that is the new measure of value versus the older models, which will continue to exist and aren't going away, which is the volume of sales or maybe the price of sales. Many of these service businesses owe their history and lineage to media companies. You've seen all of these. These are all businesses, services. Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, Facebook. You don't go into a store and buy YouTube. You don't go into a shopping center and buy Netflix. You certainly don't buy Amazon in a store, though they do have some. But you do buy their services. And this is really the genesis, and when we go more deeply into where business as a service came from. And just to start this off in a fun way before we dive into the why and the how of business as a service and what it can mean for you, there are some amazing new opportunities. You can imagine, as far as your imagination will allow you, new types of businesses that deliver value to the customer, reduce the friction of consumption, or provide greater benefits at a lower cost. And think of it as a demand that can expand or contract depending on what the customer's needs are. But there's companies offering a makeup box that you can change on a monthly basis. Blue Apron is a food complement that comes for home cooking. The old concept of book of the month. There's now coffee, razors and shaving products, wines. These are all business as a service, providing you an opportunity to scale up or scale down your consumption and customize the way you're actually interacting with products you love in this case. So what are some of the benefits that we're talking about here? And what are some of the opportunities, to sort of see how these business as service models could really impact your companies in Panama, the innovation economy in Panama in general, the opportunities for workers, the opportunities for small business and large business. And what are some of the things that you have to be careful about in terms of business as service, as we have that individual on the lower right here, unfortunately, falling into that hole. There are not that many holes here, but there are some. And we're going to go over basically the vast majority of the opportunities of this new business model innovation of business as a service, and just some of the things you have to consider to make sure you don't have pitfalls. So let's do a very quick summary, and we're going to get into the benefits. We're talking about providing customers new concepts and new ideas of offering them what your business may offer today as a transaction, a single element. We're talking about now offering that as a service opportunity. Some things over time won't be able to be offered as services. I think we're going to talk a little bit about that in our Q&A a little bit later. But many things that people didn't think would be able to be brought to you as a service, like computing hardware, like razors and the like, were things that actually could be offered as a service. Why do I mention just on summarizing things that people didn't consider could be serviceized? Because right behind what we've been talking about so far in this quick summary is innovation and thinking outside the box of your traditional sales and distribution channels. Maybe it's working with countries like the Netherlands or the United States in new service models around logistics, or new service models around native products that you have in Panama. But the creativity and innovation that we're actually going to look at here in terms of the behind the scenes of the business model is what's really driving this. And Panama is an incredibly innovative country, and therefore I think it has a lot of opportunity with some of the benefits here. So if you had an old style business and you were selling people, I'll just use the example again, big computers for their business, and you said, I'm going to now offer not big computers, but because the internet connects everyone and cable and wireless doing that down by you and others, I can now offer them computation in their business, let's say an accounting firm or some other, a small manufacturer, and I can do it in ways that provide a lot of benefits to the customer. So the customer doesn't have to have that very, high cost up front. But some of the benefits for me as the company, we saw customer benefits in the prior slide: reduced cost, more flexibility, scalable demand. As the customer's business grows, they grow on the platform. But what about for the creative minds who can come up with business as services offerings? What are some of the benefits to the companies offering business as service? Whether it's the Volvos or a logistics company, a banking entity. Well, you have amazingly predictable revenues when people are buying on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, and it's a continuous, I'll think of it in here as a subscription. We're going to look at that in a few minutes. We like consistent revenues because that reduces our seasonality. Because we're connected with the customer through digital channels, we can test products in a real-time way to see if the products that are digital products or even physical products are providing the value. And there are best practices where we can offer lower perceived prices and actual prices to the customer, and the customer doesn't have to pay for things that they don't need. For example, too customized a product early on for a new business may be too much. So why does the customer need to pay for that? But over time, as they grow, the customer can customize the product on the platform, especially if it's a software product. It's a little different if it's hardware, and we could talk about that in the Q&A if we want. And self-service is a really powerful construct because often when you're looking for service, you need it right now. So many of these platforms, and some of the ones you saw, provide the opportunity for self-service so that you can get your business running back online faster if there's ever an issue. So these benefits really all wrap up into, and for some reason my picture did not come out here, but this is actually a picture that is the cover of The Economist. I'm going to try flipping it back and forward one time to see if it works, but if it doesn't, it's a mystery picture now, and I'll tell you what it is. It's a beautiful picture that shows that data is the new oil. So these business as services, because they're connected to customers, provide data back to the business that's providing the service about how the customer is using the product. In the case of the jet engines that Rolls-Royce provides as a service to airlines in Latin America and in the US and in Europe, how is that engine functioning? How often is it on? What's its fuel consumption? When does it need maintenance? All of this is because of sensors that are out in the world. We have sensors in our phone. We have sensors in our PCs. Manufacturing floors are filled with sensors these days. And so therefore, when we think about all of what we're talking about in terms of data, the fact is that with business as service business models, we can use that data to understand the value that we're getting as a business offering the service, and we can understand the customer better. And as Carmen was saying, when the customer is in the middle and we have data, it helps everybody get a better product in the end. If you have a willing supplier and a customer whose needs can be identified, those two things working together can therefore make a very high velocity product development, product evolution pipeline that's as important in selling things like, a Airbnb concept as it is in, I'm going to use this as a broader concept, education as a service. Because if you think about it, in the distributed model, in the COVID world, where people are taking in education in various ways, many of whom are in front of screens where they have internet connectivity and are learning from teachers who may be, miles, if not hundreds of miles away, it's a service. And because there's data and because there's a classroom and there's a shared environment, imagine the power of transforming that relationship by improving the engagement like improving a physical product, a razor blade, or the service of leasing a rental home. And all of a sudden, the data feedback loop is that much more important. So when you hear people talk about data and you hear them talk about business and business services, they're wrapped up to come to something that I want to start to show you here is the lifetime value of a customer. And I don't want you to get too sort of caught up in this equation here. And I didn't mean to throw a little math at us this early in the morning, but what really this is saying is when you start thinking about innovation and you start thinking about innovation that happens with business today, where the business is connected to the consumer, either directly through a subscription or a software-driven product, or because the business has a relationship to the consumer through their mobile phone or a computer, you can now know your customer, have a relationship with your customer in a better way than ever before, and you can understand the value that your customer is providing you, and you can use that over a lifetime point of view to understand what it is that the customer is delivering you as value and how to increase that value to your business while at the same time increasing the value to the customer. So lifetime value is a very new way for many companies to think about the value created in the economics of their business. It's how media and a lot of other businesses have thought for a long time. But we really think about how much money is someone paying us for our business as a service per month or per year? And what is that average value, right? How often are they paying? And then how long do they stay with us? Do they stay with us for 6 months? Do they stay with us for a year? That number is called churn, and we'll hear more about that in a little bit. But if you take those and you do some simple calculations, I'm going to show you an example of this a little bit later on, you can find out very quickly how much your customer is worth to you. And therefore, if you spend time to improve, whether it's a business you're selling to that's the customer, whether it's an end user, a consumer at the end of your value chain, whether it's a student or a pupil who is paying you through their attention, if not maybe a subscription to something, you can look at the value and therefore try and increase the value to you and the customer at the same time. A new way of thinking about that relationship that's beneficial to the buyer and the supplier. We've always tried to do that in transactional businesses, but when we think business as a service, we think recurring business, offering the same products, making them better over time. We then look to expand the customer's lifetime value. And by doing that, expanding the value to the customer, if we do it in an appropriate way, expand the value to our businesses, and therefore we create more lifetime value. And if we can do it in ways that reduce costs for the customer and for us, because we're using our scale and the size of our platform, think of Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Apple in its cloud offering, Google, using some technology companies, cable and wireless, certainly in its infrastructure. Besides the CapEx behind that, if we manage it the right way, we can look to create greater lifetime value and greater profits. So, business as a service has many powerful opportunities, but it also requires us to do certain things that are, if we choose to go down this new innovation path, which companies around the world are choosing to look at, take their lead strategy people and define new growth opportunities, new product models, and look for business as a service offerings that they can provide into their economic markets and to different customer segments. But in order to do this, you really need to think about transforming your company and your economy in ways that I think once you embrace this idea of business as a service will forever create much longer term value than not doing this. And you can see from the tech giants who have all embraced business as service, certainly telecommunications companies have been doing this for many years, decades. but so many new companies like the ones that I had have really decided that if they don't do this, they can't provide enough customer value in the old models of transactions. It's too easy for them to get competed out by someone who is providing business as service offerings. And what they need to focus on and dive into, and we'll talk more about this in the section where I talk about what you might think about for your businesses, and that's just coming up. But you need to think about your business almost like Amazon or an e-commerce company thinks about their business. And I'm not saying make your company an e-commerce company, but the way Amazon or e-commerce companies think about, or Netflix or Hulu or these different media companies, HBO, how do I find the customer, which is in the upper left, customer acquisition? How do I improve my product over time so I can retain the customer and therefore reduce what we call churn? That's people leaving our service offering, like canceling your Netflix subscription is churn. So how do I make my product better? How do I make my customer management experience better? If I have to call a company and I can't get anybody on the line and I have problems, they're not going to want to stay with me on a subscription basis because they can't get the service that they need. So part of this business as a service innovation model is about being incredibly customer relationship focused. And I have some frameworks, if anybody would like to talk to me after this, about how to actually think very, very systematically about how to take your business and think of customer business as service. But one of the key things I'll give you, one of the key elements is building a very high quality customer relationship management system. So you can take information in from your customers, whether you're in education, manufacturing, logistics, banking, and really know that customer through the data that they are providing you, and for which you have a responsibility and opportunity to work with to help scale the value to that customer and therefore scale your own business's revenues, profitability, and the like. But if you don't buy into these things and you go sort of halfway and not full bore, you'll be like this man with the ladder. How do you get over that hurdle? You really can't. You must be all in this. And that doesn't mean throwing out your old business at all. It means using that as the pillar to create new business as service offerings. So the math, we're not going to go into in depth, and I don't want to sort of bog us down, but what we really see are these three components, and I talked about them on the prior slide, which is if I'm getting a monthly revenue stream, and I'm going to show you a specific example, there's a cost to acquire a customer, and there's people staying or leaving my service offering. Imagine people canceling their subscription business service. Is someone churning? If churn goes up, or the cost of providing the service goes up, or the cash flow goes down, lifetime value goes down. And that's not a good thing. Because why I picked churn as the example on this slide, I'll show you churn, the number of people not taking your service who used to. Maybe it's after a free trial. Maybe I'll raise my hand. I've tried a few services in a free trial, and maybe I stayed with it a month or two and I left because it wasn't providing me enough value. That's one of the key metrics that really says, are you doing the job well enough to provide value to your customer? So churn is a critical element, and I'm going to show you a little bit of math in this slide to give you a sense in a microcosm using Netflix. Some of you may subscribe to Netflix. What has John been talking about in this innovation concept of business as a service? He mentioned lifetime value, and he also mentioned a bunch of different numbers. But what's he really saying in terms of how to reconceive of how you look at your customers to provide them more value, better products, and make your own company have more consistent value creation, revenue, and profitability? I'm not going to go line by line, but I'm going to give you the general construct. If Netflix, we're charging you $12 a month. And these are roughly the right numbers. And it costs them initially $50 through marketing and maybe free product to give you, to get the customer $50. And let's say every month, 2% of the customer. Hello, can you hear me? I think you can. I just heard somebody. Cost every month, 2% of people left. What that would say, the math works out in this service as a business construct that we could call Netflix, but it could be, a bank in Panama offering a new type of customer account that the customer might get some interest, but also pay a little bit for because it provided money exchange in a different way, or a way to track household spending, or tax-related service, whatever it might be. But if the customer was there for an average lifetime of 50 months, which is just the churn divided into 1, that's how you figure that out. And we had the $12 a month that they were paying us and the acquisition cost of $50 in the lifetime of the customer that would be with us on our platform. And they may be there a lot longer. I'm not just saying they're only there for 50 months. They may be there for many months, 10 years, right? But it would be $550 to the business. And thinking in that way is really interesting because look, we just went from a monthly subscription, the cost of acquisition, which is marketing, and some sort of churn, to a very powerful number, $550, that says over the lifetime, we would generally expect to get $550 for that customer's experience with us. Is that a good number? Well, if it costs us more than $550 to deliver that experience over 50 months for that customer, it's not a good proposition for us. It may be a great one for the customer. If the churn number is very high, so that's people leaving our service, let's say it were 10%, not 2%, that means the customer would only be with us for 10 months on average. Well, if we were only getting $12 a month, that would be only $120. That wouldn't be very good either. So when we think about lifetime value in a single number, almost like if your employees walked in the morning and they saw today's on a dashboard, today's average lifetime value of a customer equals X. Tomorrow it may be higher. The next day it may be lower. A new product is offered. It may go way up. It's almost a complete new innovation model for thinking about every employee in your company and their skills being aligned to the customer and creating value for that customer. In the old days, on the factory floor or in marketing or in other parts of the business, sometimes it was hard to get people to come together and see the overall value. But in a lifetime value analysis, now everybody in your company or in an educational entity, even in the government, can see what it is that the customer is saying to us as value they are getting through the numbers of what they're paying, the churn, and that acquisition cost. So let's talk a little bit as we go into the home stretch here of what is in this for us. So us is you as the business person and thinking about what your business could be. And this is the part where creativity and innovation starts to come together so that you all in Panama, along with the experts that you have in market and experts outside of the market, can maybe reconceive or build entirely new business strategies with high growth, lower capital costs, higher cash flows, and more customer centricity to deliver value. And so these service business models have often, and I've held this back a little bit, have often been called other things in history. They've been called subscriptions. They've been called rentals. They've been called leases. And yes, these are all service business models. But the thing that's new in what we're talking about, that's the innovation and the difference is that it's really bound together today in an electronic fabric brought to us by technology and telecommunications companies. And that fabric is what allows us to offer business as service and have those powerful data feedback loops that we talked about that allow us to create better products. So when you think about your business and you think about the smallest business and even the largest businesses and creating offerings that might be in a small business, a monthly recurring offering where you're giving customers who might even come into your small store to pick something up, like a box of new and neat products, or a curated offer, or for a big company, a completely new division, an international product line offering service-sized offerings of your traditional business. You need to think about creatively, how am I going to really understand and catalog my customers' needs? What are the systems I'm going to use? They don't have to be that complex. And by the way, you can buy customer relationship management systems as services. That's what Salesforce.com is. You can buy them very inexpensively now as services to help you build your business service. So what you're seeing now is people providing business as a service, like customer relationship management services, are the inputs to your business opportunity in thinking about your business providing services to others. So you don't have to start from scratch. The other things that what's needed from you is where I show a wheel that's evolved from a stone wheel to a modern wheel is product innovation. You can't just say, I'm going to offer a business as a service and not, innovate and when I say innovate, develop your product over time. Because over time, someone else will evolve the product and then you'll lose the customer relationship and the business as a service will not be there in a way that you thought it would. So providing greater value, because the customer is the key. We're going to go to the lower right. The customer is in the middle, is critical. And you have to really take that moment where you and your management team, if it's a bigger business, and it really does need to be a team, because you can imagine this can't work in an old model where I just hand things off in my enterprise. We now have to think holistically about our strategy, business model, customer relationships, marketing, product, delivery holistically. We can manage it in more traditional ways, but we must think about it with the customer in the middle, because that customer is going to give us the data and the money back to actually see value off of the service-sized business. And that's critical because so many businesses in the past have not put the customer in the middle. And the pandemic is accelerating that notion that the customer is in the middle. Because as we sit behind our screens, as you listen to me behind your screen, and I really do appreciate you listening to me, if I'm not providing you value, if I'm not making this interesting, you're going to turn me off. And that's exactly the same thing that businesses are facing today. And that's why the customer has to be in the middle. And that lady who's running very fast is an emblematic image, an iconic image to me of speed. Because the truth is, we've had to shift ourselves in the pandemic faster than ever before. We also need to provide customer value to be innovative in a way that we haven't in the past. And service businesses, old school service businesses like hotels and the like, often didn't move quickly enough. Business as a service, where the customer can cancel very quickly or let you know that things aren't working, must move at a very, very substantial pace to make sure the customer is happy, to make sure that lifetime value metric is increasing and that the product is evolving. And that speed is critical. But once you get used to it, just like a new exercise program, it just becomes the way you can do business. And in the Q&A, I can talk a little bit more about how I see helping your economy achieve some of that. So it's been a fast journey. I've gone quickly. I apologize that I've gone quickly. I do want to say that what we've seen in the pandemic is, by many accounts, the acceleration of many trends that existed prior to the pandemic now are going to be accelerated and just will be the way things are in the future. And so if you think about it, the notion of tele-interaction, education, medicine, technologies being provided as services for businesses, the relationships between companies where customer relationship management is more important than ever, all speak to a super cycle of innovation that is about offering business as a service. And that is from the smallest business to the largest business. So we are seeing a shift that's been going on, but that's been accelerated in the pandemic. And the way I like to think about it is everything we knew about where business was going and everything that we thought might come is happening, and it's happening at a faster rate. So everything you see today will be accelerated, not with loss of quality or delivery, but will only be people, customers, business partners, wholesale and retail, all getting more of what they need and want in better ways, so that the future will be very similar to today, except it'll be more of the things that we are seeing the pandemic setting off in terms of a fundamental, data-driven, connected future that is really positive for opportunities for countries that have very, very strong sort of infrastructure, connectivity, trading partners. Education is paramount in this world, and of new business as a service, a skilled workforce, and it will help people who are not just knowledge workers. This will help people who are working in companies that are making products that are also servicizing those products. So this could be transformative across the entire landscape of Panama, some of these ideas, and they're not impossible to implement. For example, if John Penny wanted to tomorrow become a silicon chip designer for Intel, he couldn't do that. That would be almost an impossibility. I can't do that. I don't know enough about physics and engineering. But if John Penny wanted to apply these skills in business as a service and go in and work with a company that had a very traditional non-business as a service model, he could help them do that. If I can do that, you all can do that. And I mean that because these foundations are out there in the market, and people are willing and able, technology companies like Cable and Wireless, service providers, can help you turn your business into its next stage of growth and its next stage of consumer value creation to benefit your businesses, accelerate innovation in Panama, accelerate the benefits to society, accelerate all the capabilities that lead to long-term prosperity for economies. And service, business as a service, will be in the center of that, no doubt. It's been a short introduction. I've gone fast. I'm sorry, especially for those who Spanish is their primary language. But gracias for listening to me. I really do appreciate it. And we're going to get into a Q&A with Carmen, and hopefully this was helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John, so much for this presentation. Before the Q&A, we're going to start with the fireside chat. Recibimos ahora a Carmen Vergara, moderadora de nuestro fireside chat, Empowering Innovation.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, John. That was an excellent speech. And so now let's get into it. Let's get into the details of what you have shared with us, which was a lot. It was a lot. But I would start by asking you that many people say that empowerment is the key for people to innovate. Do you agree? And what is your perspective about that?
I agree 100%. And let's talk a little bit about that. I did throw a lot at you so we could try and link some things here. The good news is that empowerment is in the center of what we were actually discussing. So when we talk about empowerment and innovation, much of what I was speaking to today, if you took anything away from the talk, and I went into detail and I went at a high level, some people love detail, some people high level. If you took away anything, it's that high-performing teams where individuals are empowered to make decisions by their managers, are the ones that can see the world in a new way to help the customer, Carmen, and to help deliver value to that customer in any industry segment, and even in government. I do, as Carmen knows, I have a background in science and technology policy. And the truth is that if you don't have an empowered workforce, and I'll talk a little bit about what that specifically means, you can't focus clearly and with energy and a purpose and bring out every worker's best capabilities to serve the customer, to serve the overall business, and to serve ultimately the long-term benefits of the country. And so innovation and empowerment can be thought of as a hand and a glove. Mm-hmm. The glove is innovation. The empowerment is taking minds and people's abilities and nurturing those in ways that, to use a sports analogy, is like taking raw talent in soccer, football, and having a coach build the construct of a team working together to deliver the capability on the pitch to play the game at the highest level. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but if the players aren't empowered to make decisions at the moment and in real time and over a span, they're never going to be able to come together to produce that winning outcome. So when you think about innovation and empowerment, as managers, and in our audience, there are a lot of very powerful people, you want to think about the combination of empowering your people to build new business opportunities that you work with them to bring out, to have the workforce be empowered to bring up new ideas, to serve the customer, not to bark commands at them in a traditional hierarchical model. This doesn't mean we don't have hierarchy, but it means that your people are your creativity, your national population is your workforce for different roles. They are the people who need to be energized to deliver business as service value to customers, the business community, and the economy overall. So it's a great point, Carmen. Empowerment is key, and having individuals who can help design programs to define and enable a more empowered worker is a really great starting point for much of what we talked about here.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. We used to make that analogy of rowing versus whitewater rafting, and not all the time you're gonna go into calm waters, and when you are in rough waters, you have to know that everybody on the boat with you can make decisions that can affect your life also. So you want the best people there in those scenarios, and the people that are empowered to actually make decisions in very difficult circumstances, like the ones we have in the world today, unfortunately. If there was ever any rough waters, these are the ones in our time. So going back to that point, you were talking about the difference between service businesses models and service businesses. So can you elaborate a little bit more about that distinction?
Sure. What I wanted to do with you all today is give you a view that there's a new approach for innovation. So sometimes when we talk about service businesses, and I'm going to go slow here because this actually, because of the language of service businesses and then what people talk about as business as a service gets confusing. They do intersect. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. But in order for our discussion to be clear around innovation, we want to keep them a little bit apart. So the first piece is there are plenty of service businesses out there that are very traditional, right? Restaurants, lodging, insurance, banking. Those businesses are about interacting with customers directly, and those customers may not be individuals, they may be other companies, but about providing them value and long-term value. And it's very important in service businesses for the people who interact with customers to be extraordinarily appreciative that they're having a customer interaction, and that every time you touch a customer is the ability to give that customer more value, even if there's a difficulty, and building a better relationship for your service business, a hotel. If something goes wrong, you help the customer, you help the person staying there. That is, we'll call it a defined model. And I'm not going to say it's the past. It's one component of service. The new component we're adding onto this is the continuous connection with a customer. So providing the customer a service all the time for when they need it, on demand. An example, I don't watch TV all the time. No one should. It's not good for you to watch TV all the time. But if you have Netflix, knowing that it's there, but it's there whenever you need it. And you can watch Hulu or HBO as much or as little as you want. It's a simple example. But that's the new definition, a new definition of someone providing video to you as a service. It's different than a service business where, in the traditional sense, I would have customer interaction directly. I would, be able to locate the service business in my mind as an insurance office, a bank. All of those things are very traditional. What we're now talking about as new business models for any business is a constant connection to the customer that improves the customer's life when they're using the product, and sometimes when they're not directly using the product.
So you talked about banking several times in that example. Yeah. And as you know, the Financial Services Center here, the banking center, as we call it in Panama, is one of our main economic drivers and has been so for many years. But I wanted to ask you, how does the shift in the new services model apply to industries like banking and tourism and logistics? You also mentioned education, which is also a very important part of the government plan here. So how do you see those things being affected by this new service model?
Yes, with these new types of business models, there's a world of new opportunity, which doesn't require you to throw out the old. It's actually an innovation path that you can start today at a lower cost. Let's use banking as an example. So the traditional banking relationship, I'll use a consumer because we can all imagine ourselves in this case, has a bank account somewhere. They may write checks and they may go into the bank and make deposits. Some consumers may use a computer, to check their account or pay some bills. But what about a bank that offered a new online banking service that provided various offerings that are related to financial transactions, but aren't just purely about keeping your money safe somewhere, paying you a little interest and helping you pay bills? What if the bank could help you find the best prices for things? I'm using examples that don't exist today just to make it sort of fun, like a little innovative. What if the bank offered you services for, real estate and home buying because they're going to give you a mortgage? So there are websites that you could go to today that help you find what the price of a home should be. What if, because the bank has a lot of information on that, it could provide you a service like that? And so 3 or 4 things that were non-traditional banking services wrapped up in a digital offering from the bank's key relationship that it has today with the customer could equate to a $2, $4 a month subscription to an offering that's utilizing the same capabilities and relationship that the bank has today to generate a continuous revenue stream and a much closer relationship with that customer that can improve product and service. That's a win-win for everyone. Education, very interesting. Similar example. let's say that there are people who maybe not biologically, but like to learn in different ways. Okay, so we can utilize the service, business as a service model to say, okay, you've been working in a Zoom, I'll just use a brand, a Zoom classroom, and you've been listening to the lecture and you've been doing well on the homeworks. But in some of the math problems, we can see, because they're online, that you're having some challenges. What if the family could buy additional tutoring services, both by humans in Panama? So think of Uber for tutoring. It's actually not a bad idea. Uber for tutoring.
And you heard it here first, folks.
Yes, and let's build it. Let's build it together, because based on the government's need and desire, this is the same for every country around the world, to have the most educated, skilled workforce for whatever the future holds. Matching, if I'm having trouble and I'm looking for a tutor that's not just going to go on an electronic whiteboard, but maybe some very creative individual that can show me, how statistics works with simple animations, or some fun way of participatory learning. Or for people who are just like, need more chalk on the chalkboard, that way. But education could be seen as a service that then individuals could either buy, or the government could subsidize, or corporations for training and needing new employees who have skill sets could subsidize new offerings. That's the dynamic, that's the difference between service businesses and offering continuous innovation services. They're related, but the exciting part is this movement up a curve along with delivering best-in-class service businesses too. Back to you.
Excellent. I think we're almost out of the time allocated for this discussion between us for the fireside chat. And I am sure that we have a lot of questions from the audience. So just very briefly to conclude the chat, can you mention in your personal experience ways to empower innovation in companies? Give us one or two examples very briefly, and then we'll go to the Q&A part.
Okay, two simple ways to do this, and it requires the most senior leadership to believe that change done the right way will result in better outcomes if risk is managed well rather than worse outcomes. Because most innovation stopping cultures are more worried about the change producing negative outcomes than positive ones. So the two examples of how to do this is have a leader who sees a presentation like today and says, let's put a team together to think about business as service constructs that we can build on top of our business, and have the right people who are excited about change, excited about creating growth that's many times scaled, big growth, who are not fearful of creativity and energy, put them in a room together and bring back offers and ideas that are planning for a new business future, and not see that as a threat to the business, but see that as an opportunity. So that's the first one thing you can do. And we did that with some companies that I work with. And we built some very big businesses. For example, a business in the Middle East that's a subscription video service. It's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's actually basically how we did it. And then the other way to do this is to really embrace the young mindset in the company. And that doesn't mean just young people, but the mindset of your employees who want to be creative, and bring them into formal sessions, empower them to speak to what would make their lives better from the products that your company is offering. This could be at the level of a small shop all the way to a major corporation, and really listen to what they're saying. And you might not like everything they say, because companies do things in a certain way for a long period of time and often don't completely try and rethink their offers. But empowering your people to basically say, you know, if we did this, this, and this, we might really connect with the consumer in a better way. And having a formal way of collecting that, and I don't mean a suggestion box, I mean on a quarterly basis or more, to then build business as service constructs, better service businesses, definitely, manufacturing improvements, all of that. But really listen to who you have, because remember, it's the employees that you lose to the competition who are the creative ones, who really you don't even know and measure how detrimental to your company that is. Because the one person who goes to the next company who had in their head some idea, or is that type of mind that comes up with ideas, that invents a new business line for you that could take your business up by 20%, 30%, 50%. It's immeasurable damage to your business that you lost that person. So listen to the people within, empower them to bring ideas, and focus them on the path to customer centricity, innovation, business as service, and things actually play out quite nicely, Carmen.
Thank you, John. And well, with those words of wisdom, let's go into the Q&A. I'm sure that we have a lot of questions for you.
Muchísimas gracias, Carmen Gisela y John, por hacer este Fireside Chat tan interesante y lleno de conocimiento. Y ahora definitivamente abrimos nuestro espacio de preguntas y respuestas con el público general. And the first one is, what are the biggest obstacles that you consider for implementing service business models?
The biggest obstacle is not being customer-centric enough. So really you need to say to yourself, how am I going to catalog and understand what my customers are saying to me about my products continuously? And many people don't like to hear bad news about their product isn't working or their product is, you know, not as good as the next product. And the truth is, if you don't listen to that, your customers are going to move away, and they're going to move away quickly. The pandemic is showing that. For many businesses that can't deliver value in the pandemic, people are just going to other places. So it's a great question, because it's really about listening to the customer if you don't do that. And then it's about having a way to manage that information about the customer. So if you don't put into place the systems and the practices to maintain the customer experience and retain that for you to learn about that particular customer, then you're really putting yourself at risk in terms of offering a bigger, better service, since the customer needs will not be fulfilled as clearly as if you are interacting in your corporate mindset with the customer in the middle, that CRM driving product evolution, creating more value for the customer and you for the business. If you don't get the customer in the middle, in the beginning, that's the biggest risk.
Thank you, John. Why is it important for brands to make product innovation?
So there are a couple of reasons. Because the first is that innovation is really thought of, in my view of it, we use the word, but we often use it in a very technology-centric way. And that confuses the word innovation. So a lot of people who talk about innovation use, you know, semiconductors, mobile phones, and all of the innovative products, incredibly innovative, as the examples. But brands need to focus on innovation. They may use technology, but for a different reason. Innovation itself is solving human problems in a more efficient way. And so if you think about innovation as solving human problems, and this could be in any industry, people have problems. They need to be solved. Medicine solves physical problems. You know, accounting solves the problems of you have to account. Education solves problems in terms of learning. All of these things are problems that innovation can now address, and new business models and technology platforms aren't the end point. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for things that solve the consumer's problems. And we're also looking for brands to identify the problems that consumers have and they don't even know it. So before, Airbnb, before Amazon home delivery, before so many things like cable and wireless offering, texting services, we didn't know we actually needed those things. So by brands innovating and bringing us new products and services, we actually got things that solved consumers' problems, whether it's a business to business or business to consumer, doesn't matter. So brands must innovate. They must not sit on their laurels, as we say. They must not just take it for granted. They must see solving consumers' problems over time as the key objective. And business as service models do that almost better because of the data feedback than almost any other way. And it will ensure that your companies will provide the best for consumers, the best economic returns, and be there for many, many, many decades if you are an innovator seen as solving consumer problems. And don't let anybody confuse you. It's not just about technology. It's about solving problems.
John, thank you so much. We are going to apply everything we learned today. Y a continuación, le damos la bienvenida a Dana Alsalén, Global Tech Entrepreneur, Speaker and Innovation Expert, que hoy nos trae el Masterclass Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Dana está a la vanguardia de los medios digitales desde el año 1994, cuando cofundó Clockwork, mientras se graduó de Parsons School of Design en Historia del Arte y Diseño Multimedia. Adelante, Dana.
Hello, my name is Dana Al-Salim, and I'm absolutely delighted to be part of BIZ FIT 2020 online. I'd like to talk today about innovation and entrepreneurship. Where does innovation stem from? What qualities do entrepreneurs share? So most of you probably started your morning with this. What you may not realize is this simple drink had a major impact on an entire movement of innovation in the UK. Until the 18th century, it was unsafe to drink water, so people drank cider, ale, beer, gin, and brandy instead. They would start with ale for breakfast, move on to gin at lunch, and end with sherry. Everyone was basically drunk all day. Now, something happened in 1650 that would not only change these habits, but would contribute to the Age of Enlightenment: the birth of the coffee house. People from all walks of life swarmed to meet, drink, think, write, gossip, and debate. It would cost 1 penny for entrance and unlimited refills. This allowed for a plethora of guests from all social backgrounds and experiences to interact. The switch from booze to coffee not only contributed to people being more alert, more awake, but the diverse environment also led to a hub of ideas, exchanges, and innovation. It brought people and ideas together. It offered a place for curious minds to gather and discuss. From political events to scientific theories, to finance or discoveries from around the globe. Poets, playwrights, journalists, members of the public, scientists, bankers gathered all around a long wooden table, thinking, writing, debating, and discussing for hours. This was an environment that inspired brilliant ideas. Merchants, ship captains, cartographers, and stockbrokers built the insurance industry at Lloyd's over coffee. The coffee houses near the Royal Society galvanized scientific breakthroughs. So as we look at how the coffee houses have led to some major breakthroughs in innovation in the 18th century, we must ask ourselves, are there environments in which innovation stems from? Similar trends we see across innovation, patterns that we see lead to innovation, or ways to study these characteristics and apply them to our own lives or organizations to stimulate innovation. Perhaps we should start by changing our perception of what innovation means. Often we tend to imagine innovation as a split-second moment, using terms like eureka, light bulb, flash, stroke, epiphany. We tend to picture moments of innovation like this, the Archimedes eureka moment. We imagine that innovation comes from a single thought, a single illuminating moment in time, that it is an isolated idea, but it's not. An idea comes from a network of sparks connecting small hunches together. It's our neurons firing off in our brain. It is a fluid network in which the configuration, the way we think of a problem, is different. So what environments can we put ourselves in to foster more of these different connections? How can we create more of these sparks? Manshuk Prajapati is a Gujarati clay roofer who had no formal education. His village was destroyed in an earthquake in 2001. In the press clippings showing the devastation, he spotted a headline under a water filter saying, "The broken fridge of the poor." He was inspired to build a fridge for the poor, which would be self-sustaining in the event of another earthquake. Between 2001 and 2004, he painstakingly tested clays and soils, building hundreds of prototypes. He had to sell his house to repay his loans. He consulted with local organizations and other clay experts for advice on evaporation processes. He asked people for feedback on his prototype at local trade shows. And finally, in 2005, this is what he released.
मिट्टी ब्रिज है। इसकी खास विशेषता यह है कि इसमें बिजली की जरूरत नहीं है और इसमें सिर्फ पानी भरने का, पानी 10 लीटर पीने के लिए ठंडा मिलते हैं और अंदर उसके हिस्से में सब्जियां, फ्रूट, मिल्क जो कुछ रखने का है वो सब कुछ आप रख सकते हैं। और इसके बाद हमने बनाया है मिट्टी को वाटर फिल्टर। जो मिट्टी को वाटर फिल्टर की विशिष्टता ये है कि ये मिट्टी का है, इसमें 0.9 माइक्रोन वाली मिट्टी की फिल्टर कैंडल लगाई हुई है। ये कैंडल के अंदर के हिस्से में दो कैंडल की वजह से नीचे से पानी टपक टपक आते हैं और वो पानी नीचे के बॉक्स के अंदर आएंगे। वो पानी एकदम ठंडा और क्लीन मिलते हैं, जो गरीबों का आरो प्लान है। और हमारा ये मिट्टी को वाटर फिल्टर है।
So you see, Manshuk had a hunch, the small spark of the beginning of an idea. He had some basic knowledge of clay and its behaviors to cooling. He knew what the parameters and limitations on resources were. No electricity, low spend. But he collaborated with others, testing and tinkering, for 3 years before he even had a prototype. He then got customer feedback and repeatedly improved his product with this. This is what innovation is. It's a series of ideas that are cobbled together. Ideas do not happen in a vacuum. They come from external stimuli. We take ideas from what we've read, seen, other people's ideas, people we overhear in the coffee house, and we sew them together into something new. So perhaps our perception of what deep thinking or where ideas or innovation comes from also needs to change. We imagine deep thinking and innovative thoughts like this: The Thinker, Le Penseur by Rodin. In fact, the spaces that have led to innovation tend to look like this. This coffee house illustrates the type of chaotic environment that leads to innovative thought. It's a place where exciting, unexpected ideas can come together. So if you want to encourage innovation, perhaps your office should look like this. We often think of a scientist hunched over his microscope when suddenly he jumps up with Eureka! But in reality, there is no Eureka moment. Innovation comes from an environment where ideas collide and rub up against each other. An analyst, Kevin Dunbar, wanted to figure out where innovation comes from. So he taped scientists in a lab over months, doing the most minute tasks in front of their microscopes, by the water cooler, having coffee in weekly meetings. What he discovered was that the breakthrough moments did not happen when a scientist was alone in front of their microscope. They actually happened at the weekly lab meetings, where everyone shared their findings, their data, and also their mistakes. There was something in that environment, something in those discussions where conversation flowed between these people. This fluid network of ideas, observations, and mistakes were exchanged between people of different interests and backgrounds. This exchange of ideas, jostling and bouncing off each other, is where innovation starts. Psychologically, people want to tell the story of the Eureka moment. There is something in our ego that wants a claim to fame. But by analyzing data, we discover that innovation has a long incubation period. It happens over time, whilst new concepts are being pieced together. An idea can linger over long periods of time in the back of our minds. An idea may not fully mature until we have all the tools to make it feasible. Or we may need to have an experience or another person who can help us trigger the idea into a real innovation. So how do you create an environment that enables these ideas to grow and mature over time? Some companies have mechanisms for employees to be encouraged to work on and cultivate hunches into ideas. Often these mechanisms not only encourage new ideas, but also enable employees to connect their ideas together. Take Toyota as an example. The culture of incremental innovation ensures all employees know innovation is a job requirement woven into the business practices. Katsuaki Watanabe said, "We just do whatever we believe is right, trying every day to improve every little bit and piece. But when 70 years of very small improvements accumulate, they become a revolution." Over the last 35 years, employee innovation suggestions have gone up from 0.1 to 48 per employee. At Netflix, the culture of innovation begins with the employee selection process. Netflix looks for 9 specific values in each employee: judgment, communication, impact, curiosity, innovation, courage, passion, honesty, and selflessness. Reed Hastings runs Netflix with a freedom and responsibility culture, allowing employees to expand on ideas and take risks, but also expects responsibility from them. Some companies have innovation time built into the working process. At 3M, employees are paid for spending 15% of their time creating whatever they want. They can raise their ideas up to senior management for development. The Post-it note was created by employees this way. Google has a similar system. It pays employees for spending 20% of their time on creating new products. Innovative companies focus on reinvention, on questioning their market position, and always looking forward. Many companies that were once great are gone, largely because they stopped innovating. According to Forbes, the average lifespan of a successful S&P 500 company was 67 years in the 1920s. Today, it's 15 years. You need to innovate and not rest on your laurels. You have to risk failure to continue to achieve great success. Creating a culture of innovation is important for any organization that wants to grow. Successful innovators focus on what matters most rather than spending efforts and resources on the less critical. More importantly, successful innovators make the hard choices on what not to focus on. With better focus and alignment, they're able to innovate more effectively and go to market more efficiently. So what about investment in research and development? Surely this can help increase innovation. What Booz & Company has discovered is that the top most innovative companies are not necessarily the top research and development spenders. 450 innovation experts at 400 companies were interviewed to identify the top 10 most innovative. 7 of the top 10 innovators were not amongst the top 10 spenders on innovation. Many of the top innovators actually spent well below their industry averages on research and development as a percentage of sales. More importantly, the top 10 innovators turned in better financial performances than the top 10 spenders in research and development. So you can spend a lot on innovation, but you can't guarantee success. Is there a type of person or a profile of an innovator? What is an innovator? An ideas person? Innovators are nonconformists. They not only have new ideas, but take action to champion them. To learn how to be a bit more like them, we need to understand what their behavior is like. Innovators make meaning as opposed to making money. Making meaning means you aim to change the world. If you change the world, you will probably make money. But if you start off with the sole desire to make money, you won't make money, you won't make meaning, you won't change the world, and you will probably fail. Here are some people making meaning.
When I say pitch black, I really mean pitch black. There were no street lights. This one caused, I would say about 2 million people to be thrown into darkness. So people have been living in Tacloban for a month in darkness.
Nung mga unang gabi na ng typhoon, ang hirap tanggapin, lalo na ang dilim. Wala kaming halos ilaw dahil walang tumutulog pa sa amin.
Ang mga pupo ay nag-iiyakan sa gabi. Mahirap makabili ng petrolyo.
First that ran out were batteries. The second were candles. The last was kerosene. There was no more ways of bringing in fuel. You would have to have something that is rechargeable. The biggest source of that is the sun. We're now in the nightlight. We have taken all that money that Pepsi has put into the development of the daylight and moved it into a night solution. One LED, one solar panel, sticking in, and they have about 10 hours of light at night. Not only were we the first ones to be able to light up communities there, we were the first ones, and I think the first ones ever, to be able to use people that have been displaced as a solar solution.
Right after ng typhoon, wala akong nakitang hope, walang light. Ngayon, mayroon ng hope sa dami ng pumutulong sa amin, and then the light has come. Andito na po. Hawak-hawak ko na po.
Another characteristic of innovators is that they are always late to the party. You all know what a procrastinator is. A precrastinator is the opposite. They do everything in advance. To understand impact of personality types on creative thought, a survey was run between precrastinators, moderate procrastinators, and extreme procrastinators. Before starting the test, the three groups were told that they were to invent a company and would have independent readers evaluate how creative and useful their ideas were. Some of them were asked to start the exercise immediately. Some were given a game to play for 5 minutes before starting the exercise, and others were given a game to play for 10 minutes. Interestingly, those who procrastinated moderately had results that were 16% more creative than the other two groups. There was no impact on creativity if they were given the game, then told about the task. Why did this happen? Why did the moderate procrastinators fare higher in creativity? Because for those who were given a short time to play, there was a period of deliberation. During this time, the idea of the company was left in the back of their minds, allowing it to incubate and mature. There are quite a few famous innovators who were procrastinators as well. Leonardo da Vinci took 16 years to complete the Mona Lisa. High-resolution scans have shown that many versions have been edited over to make improvements. While deliberating over the painting, he had time to integrate the first use of aerial perspective and advances in the uses of light. These advances revolutionized art techniques at his time, and today, 6 million visitors still view this painting each year. In 1963, Martin Luther King gave a historic speech at the March on Washington. He was up till 3 a.m. writing his speech and was still editing, rewriting minutes before he went on stage. 11 minutes into his speech, he uttered 4 words that changed history. I have a dream. Those words were not in his script. By delaying the speech writing, he left a window open to improvising, a window to other possible ideas. Innovators are quick to start, but slow to finish. Often it is because they are taking time to figure out how to make their product better than their competitors. These people are called improvers. The first mover advantage is not always true. In a survey across 50 product categories, which assessed failure and success of innovation, first movers versus improvers. First movers had a failure rate of 47%, and the improvers had a failure rate of 8%. Some companies open new markets, others improve upon it. Because it's easier to improve an idea than to create one. So to be innovative, you do not have to be first. You have to be different and better. Do you think that innovators look like this? How do we spot an innovator? Maybe we could use the web browser test to help us identify innovative types. Recently, a study was done on the choice of browsers we use. Users of Firefox and Chrome significantly outperform those who use Microsoft Explorer and Safari in job commitment and performance. They also stay 15% longer in their jobs. There are no major differences between these browsers. They have the same typing speed. They have the same computing in search results. They have similar page loading times. So why would this define a certain personality type? It's how you got the browser. If you use Explorer or Safari, you accepted the default option that came pre-installed on your computer. If you use Firefox or Chrome, you questioned the default browser and looked for other solutions that could exist. You had to be resourceful. You had to find a different browser option, download it, and install it on your computer. If you're asking yourself, if I want to be great at my job, should I just download a new browser? The answer is no. It's about the type of person you are. Are you the kind of person who doubts the default option and takes initiative to find a better solution? Another characteristic of innovators is to feel fear and doubt. Though the perception we may have of innovators and creators is strong or arrogant, they do feel uncertainty. But they express it differently than you may expect. The doubt they feel is not self-doubt, it's ideas doubt. Self-doubt causes people to freeze and be paralyzed. Idea doubt is energizing and stimulating. This is the innovation process most of us go through. This is awesome, this is tricky, this is crap, I am crap, this might be okay. Innovators, however, skip number 4 on the list. They do not make their failures personal. They focus on how to improve the idea that failed. Innovators do feel fear and are afraid of failing, but they are even more afraid of failing to try. Innovators know that our biggest regrets are not our actions, but our inactions. Elon Musk did not think Tesla would succeed. He thought that the first SpaceX launches would fail, but it was too much of a risk not to try. Innovators have many, many bad ideas. The greatest creators are the ones who fail the most because they also try the most. The more output is generated, the more variety and failures there are to learn from. They keep improving and changing again and again. It's about relentless iterations. Dyson created 5,127 versions of his vacuum in prototypes. In spite of the volume of ideas output that leads to diversity. In spite of all the bad ideas that need to be created to find a few good ones. Funnily, we remember the successes, not the failures. When it comes to creating a culture of innovation, what are the key learnings? Make meaning in the world first before thinking of making money. Great ideas are often cobbled together through sharing ideas. Build an environment of diverse ideas, connections, and exchanges. Increased research and development expenditure does not necessarily lead to more innovation. Great innovation often comes through iterations and improvements after many failures. Never be satisfied with the default option. Embrace the fear of failing to try. Procrastination is a vice to productivity but a virtue for creativity. You need a lot of bad ideas to find a few good ones. Ideas do not happen in a flash. They take time to come into focus. Innovation sometimes happens in the most wonderful and unexpected ways. In 1957, Sputnik had been launched by the Russians. In a physics lab of Johns Hopkins University, all the physics geeks were thinking, this is incredible, I can't believe this. Geyer and Weifenbach asked their colleagues, hey, has anyone tried to listen to the satellite? The satellite must be broadcasting some kind of signal. We could probably tune in and hear it. But their colleagues said, no, we never thought of trying that. Weifenbach was a microwave reception expert, so he starts fiddling around with this little antenna and amplifier in his office. After a few hours, they pick up a signal and start listening. They think, this is a breakthrough. We must be the only people in the US to be listening to this Russian satellite. And then they start recording these signals and measuring the timestamps and dates. Using the Doppler effect, checking with colleagues, they managed to calculate the speed of the satellite. And then they thought, we could probably figure out where this is in orbit. They got permission from the university to use the huge UNIVAC computer to run some calculations, and after 4 weeks, figured out the trajectory. A few weeks later, their boss pulled them into a meeting and asked them about their project. You guys have found the unknown location of a satellite orbiting the planet from a known location on this planet, right? Could you do the opposite? Could you find an unknown location on the planet from a known location of a satellite? Because I have these new nuclear submarines, and I'm trying to figure out how to get the missiles to land on top of Moscow. But I don't know where the submarines are in the middle of the ocean. So they threw up satellites to track their submarines and find their location in the middle of the ocean. This is how GPS was born. 30 years later, Reagan opened the platform so that anyone could build upon it. This is a great example of the unpredictable power of open innovation platforms. When you build them right, they will lead you into completely new directions that you never dreamt of. So we had these scientists who had a hunch. They tinkered their hunch into an idea which they thought was helping win the Cold War, when in fact they were only helping you find the nearest cappuccino. This is how innovation happens. It favors the connected mind. Thank you very much for your time.
Muchísimas gracias a todos por acompañarnos en BIZ FIT 2020. Yo soy Catherine Boyce y fue un placer estar con ustedes durante estos últimos 3 días con speakers nacionales e internacionales de grande talla. Por favor, no olviden seguirnos en nuestras redes sociales @BIZ FIT Pma e interactuar con nosotros a través del hashtag BIZ FIT Pma 2020. Y recuerda, el próximo año venimos con nuevo contenido para ayudarte a ti a crecer tu emprendimiento o tu negocio. Yo soy Catherine Boyce y fue un placer servirles en este 2020.